Welcome to a new episode of our podcast, Lead the Future, Change the Conversation, an unedited and honest conversation to create the future. I'm Arjan Visser, Futurist and your host, and join me as I chat with my friend Chris Harding on self-leadership, future and peers, and on my latest book. Chris is the founder of InspiredCEOs and advisor to business owners who are ready to work on leadership, strategy, and long-term success in life, business, and society. Chris, thank you very much for joining today.
Great to be here again, Ian.
Yeah, it's not our first podcast we do together. I always excited about where do we land today.
Well, listen, I was really excited to see your book get out there, and so I went back and I had another look at it, and there's a couple of things that really stood out for me that I was hoping we could talk about.
Yeah, well, of course, I love to talk about it. Actually, like finalizing the book occupies my full bandwidth, or has been for the last month. So, yes, yeah, I would love to talk about it. So we switched the roles. Now you ask the hard questions.
Well, so listen, you quite early on in the book, you make this kind of statement, and I'm just going to quote it if that's okay. You said, "To lead most effectively into the future, it is essential to have a clear understanding of who you aspire to become. Your future identity isn't just a distant dream or a role to play. It is a guiding force that shapes your decisions and actions today." And the word that really stuck out for me was the who, right? Because so here's what I did. I took that phrase, "to lead most effectively into the future," and I threw it into ChatGPT, and I said, "Please, could you, give me, based on principles from widely read business books and leadership books, the 10 finishing lines to that statement to lead most effectively into the future." And you kind of get all sorts of things like, I don't know, adaptability, continuous learning, emotional intelligence, being a lifelong learner. They're all about skills and, I don't know, competencies, but as if the future is the compound effect of everything you do. And that's what I think is most interesting about your book, is that you seem to be saying it's about defining who you want to become, which is a very different message.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting because, yeah, what you say, like all the other attributes, all the skills, all the competences, they are the outcome of a healthy development process. Let's call it self-development, self-learning. But you need a focus, a filter, or a lens. And the lens that I use for the future is that the future is coming to us. And so it will happen to us or for us, a phrase we have talked many times about.
Yeah.
So it is how it will unfold, how it will be received is a result of behavior, actions, definitely. But the connection between having a great unfolding, emerging future and your well-being and your authority as a leader comes all down to who you are and who you are becoming. And
yeah, look, when I was thinking about it, I'm conscious that we're all conditioned to prefer predictability, right?
yeah,
Like the future, if I do everything right, in the right order, in the right way, at the right time, with the right people, for the right reasons, then the outcome I mean, there's a lot. I mean, everybody talks about outcomes, right? Outcomes focused. Then the outcome will be, the compound effect of doing all the right things. And it seems to me that's quite a mechanistic thing, right? If I get all the pieces in the right order, if I practice servant leadership and I do it with a vision and a values and a purpose, it's like, if I add all the right things together, they add up to a life that is successful. Great. And as I was reflecting on it, I was thinking, well, successful in whose eyes? And I'm. This sounds very judgmental, but I think that's really the ego me.
Well,
wants to predict or doesn't want to fail, wants to achieve something that the ego me can be proud of. And yet, what you seem to be talking about is that life is more than just being successful across a time frame, that it is a force or an energy that says, yes, all those things are good, but it's more than that. And it's not just more of what we had in the past, right? It's like life. What I'm reading into your book is that this is an invitation to say, what do I want my life to be about? Which seems a very different question from most other leadership books.
Yeah. Well, to go one step back, leadership is not a skill set.
Okay.
And it is. So, early in the book, I mentioned that, and that is just to set the scene a bit, of course, be a bit provocative. Like, I believe that leaders are born, and I believe that everyone is a leader. That's why leaders are born. But with every competency, it needs to be developed. So we are born with gifts, talents, and if we develop them, it becomes authentic leadership. And we learn a lot of life skills by just repeating and practice. And then maybe we can be perfect in them, but it doesn't make us an authentic leader. It just makes us just someone who is perfect in a certain skill set. So that's why most leadership books are not leadership books, but they're management books.
Right.
And they talk about how to make, like you said, the outcome controllable, not even predictable, but controllable.
Yeah.
And then I go to just Roman philosophy. That is, should I say this in a podcast? But that is just foolish. Because if you think that you can influence the environment in such a way, then you are I forgot the best man's first name, but Seneca said, you can't change the wind, but it's all about how you raise your sail.
Yeah.
So, and or
Which is
was that Dolly Parton? I don't know. But there is such a true, like, the circumstances that also makes you the victim in any environment if the circumstances seem to be different. So it makes you a failure if you focus on controlling the environment and it plays out differently.
well, that reminds me of I can't remember the guy's name who kind of summarized the spiral dynamics development cycle into basically 4 levels of development. At level 1, life happens to me, which is true for everybody. Like, when you're a child, you have no agency. Somebody else does everything for you. And then in your teenage years, you discover your own agency, and hopefully you grow up into, life happens by me. And it's not that to me is no longer true, because there are some things that you have no control over that do happen to you, but you also have agency. Like, you can raise your sail in the wind. Hopefully you progress to life happens as me, through me. But the ultimate realization, if you like, is that life happens for me. Like, the wind is there. and I get to raise my sail. But it comes back to this thing that I think your book is a lot about leadership for more life rather than just leadership for more success, is what I'm reading into it.
Yeah, well, two things. First of all, if you take those 4 stages of the spiral dynamics, and we talk many times about it, I think there are 7. That's why I actually don't mention it. I have to do some processing more about it myself. But there are multiple stages in life, you could say. The stage of life where I am at should be, by my age, life happens for me, but I'm surrounded by life happens to me people, because society, just look at marketing. If you write a marketing message, they say, write it for a 13-year-old. Well, that is the life stage crossover
Mm.
between life happens to me to life will happen soon by me. You
Yeah,
know, the Hebrews make that a whole feast for children when they have that crossover. So that's where society circles around.
yeah.
And if you think you can control the future by mastering everything, then you will be thrown back to survival mode. Life is happening to me.
Mm. Yeah.
And you mentioned life. I think it is about life, because if you talk about leadership, you should do that in all areas of life. I don't want to be in live in segments, be a different person everywhere. I have different roles, but I want to be the same person. you know Home, society, everything I do interacts with each other. But that was a choice. Actually, that was a choice that I made when I was 13, and that's the funny thing of the crossover. I made on that in that year the choice. I want to be the same every day of the week, every place I go.
Mm.
That started the
Well,
journey.
and so I think that is part of the problem of this incremental aspiration of, okay, so you know it's almost like ingredients. Add a little bit of lifelong learner, add a little bit of servant leadership, add a little bit of purpose and vision and values. I think the reason maybe most marketing is targeting people at age of 13 developmentally is because we tend to stop when we feel comfortable, um,
Well,
rather than say, but what is life really inviting from me, calling from me? I mean, they're quite old concepts, aren't they? That we don't talk a lot about anymore. The fact that there's a call on my life to become fully who I am meant to be, capable of being,
yeah,
to be.
that's you know we have all ancient Roman aspects, we have Hebrew aspects, we have a lot of Christian aspects in it. But nowadays we don't want to talk about it. But actually everything you've mentioned are, and we call it secular, like it's optional and we have a choice. But actually it's Hinduism. So we're just flipping from one stream to the other stream. So we don't want to talk about belief and religion and what it is about and philosophy, but we adopt all the aspects of Hinduism. So maybe it's a flinch in time. Uh, well, history will tell. Um, but it is in that perspective, and this is just convenient. So, like you said, we focus on self and what we can control. And as a futurist, I see no future in that. I see a future in relationship and purpose, and knowing who your right people are, where you can develop, grow, travel with into that future that was happening for you.
Yeah,
So, but
yeah,
that starts with the who. Who are you? Like, just a bit like rough language. The problem in the room is the leader. The cork in the bottle is the leader. The Germans even say the fish starts smelling from the head. So if you are a leader and you're not self-aware that your ceiling is the limitation for growth, then you should not be a leader in that role, and you should work on your self-leadership. And we can't make it more nice, but if you are not understanding that you as the leader are the one that needs to lead the way in development, in learning, in personal development, then there is an issue.
Yeah, and so look, I like the way your book lays out 7 steps, and I would say that it's 7 steps with no guarantee, because it's really 7 steps of exploration rather than do these 7 things and boom, you know,
Yeah.
you become something different. It's how far do you want to explore this idea of authentic inside out leadership, and I think it's great. I'd encourage everybody to buy it, because it's very different to anything else I've read, and it implies a different philosophy of what life is for, not
Yeah.
just what life
Mm.
is. Like, you know, I keep coming back to the metaphor of an acorn for some reason, because I've heard quite a lot of philosophers talk about it, that within the DNA of that little seed is all the potential to become a mighty oak tree that lives, 5 or 6 times longer than any human being does. Um, and it's not, and you see its growth by the rings. Like every year, the thing has become more of what it is,
Yeah.
not just some linear pathway of it become, you can measure it. Yeah, it becomes bigger. You could measure it like that. But the real story of it you can't tell from the outside, is the rings of growth every year on year on year. This thing is becoming more of what was always there in that tiny acorn.
Yeah.
And as a metaphor for the other stuff we talked about, you could say, yeah, but what about the water? What about the ground it falls in? What about the sunshine? Yeah, so those are all factors. And to some degree, you can control or engineer some of them. But the thing that seems more life-giving to me is, who am I becoming? Not what am I doing or how am I doing it. If I can't answer the first question of who am I becoming, I've missed probably the deepest question there is. And it seems to me that this book is very timely, because it's taking us back to that question.
Yeah, I like the example you give about the acorn. Yes, the oak tree grows. Oak tree actually is one of the oldest metaphor for strong, healthy leadership.
Mm.
Um, and we can say it depends where the seed is planted. But if you look to the oak tree, it's the effect the oak tree has on its environment that is much more influential, powerful than the environment on the growth of the oak tree.
Right.
And I think that's why leadership starts with self leadership. And I've heard through my years so many times, like, if you call yourself a leader, who are your followers? Well, if you lead yourself, you've got follower number one.
Would
So
you
that
yourself?
that's not a qualifier to be a leader. If you start leading from the inside out, you have one follower. That follower is your ambassador, and that is modeling what you lead, and that follower will have effect and will change the environment. And then you go from the identity, the who, to changing the context, the atmosphere, the environment, or culture, whatever you want to place as a label on it. But that is actually the context that is created by you showing up, stepping up. But it all comes back to, who are you? Who do you aspire to become? What calling do you sense? What innovative, creative ideas do you have? Don't keep them for yourself. I believe you're born in an age where you matter. So grow up, share it, bear fruit, contribute, and change your environment.
Yeah, because even the environment, whether we call it the context, whether we call it reality, um, there is a huge degree to which our perception of it can make a massive difference.
Yeah.
And if your perception of it is that I'm traveling through time to get somewhere, that's very different to being future oriented and saying the future is or the future is coming towards me. Am I all that I need to be for the future
Yeah.
potentiality that really exists in me?
Yeah. And that's one of the concepts that I start find language to articulate,
Yeah.
is that the old paradigm was there's a past, future, and a present. Oh, I talked many times in the podcast that the present, no, you have to live in the moment, not in the present, because that's a fraction of time that's always gone. And that takes the focus away from who you are becoming and what future you sense and you are preparing for. The whole thing of what's purposeful, what's meaningful is connected to what's coming next. So if we see ourselves as not being actually traveling, but time is passing by, then the past is gone, dead, or became part of you.
Yeah.
The moment is your experience, and the future, short, long term, is what's coming next. So prepare yourself for tomorrow, or actually, you live from the anticipation of tomorrow.
Yeah, and I've heard you mention that before, and it really struck me that when you said the past becomes part of me, like it's not, that just reinforces the idea that it's not just a timeline that I'm passing through.
Mhm.
And it reinforces the idea that life happens for me. Everything works together ultimately for my good if I allow it to, even the hard stuff, because every experience, every thought, everything somehow is internalized and is part of who I am now in this moment. And yeah, it's a little bit philosophical, isn't it? But I think that is the deepest level of thinking we can ever do to make sense of life,
Yeah.
and and finding language for that, uh, in a world that seems to have rejected uh, some of the richest philosophies. Yeah, it's an interesting time to be alive.
Yeah, and that is actually the key activity of the book, of everything I do actually, is find language. Am I able to articulate, starting with who I'm becoming, but also where to I want to go, with who I want to be, what I see, and all the other things. But like, it goes from a sense to an idea to words to explain it to yourself, and probably someone else will hear it and it will resonate, so you extend your follower base, but they become the travel companions. And then together, we always say, find your niche, find your inner circle. you know y- we never say that also means you have to kick others out because they occupy a seat which now needs to be for the next person. We tend to forget that always. that painful emotional journey. Um, but it all comes together. Or can I explain it to myself? You know, soon I want to get a new podcast season out there, paradigm shifts, because I remember the big paradigm shifts in my life. It took years before I could articulate it and explain it to myself. Then it took another set of years before the language was clear enough that others were not offended or confused. um so that is a long process.
Yeah, and look, I heard someone basically saying the same thing, that if you can't articulate what your vision is or what your purpose is or who you think you are, then you don't really know.
Einstein.
And if you don't really know, someone else will tell you who they want you to be.
I
Um,
think that was Einstein. He said if you can't explain it in simple language,
you don't understand
then
it.
you don't understand.
Yeah.
And we should not flip that one by having a simplified vision so we are able to explain it. No, it's the
Or
invitation of the
yeah,
journey.
and not just copying somebody else's path, thinking, well, that will be successful, because that's not who I'm here to be. It's not who you're here to be. Yeah, listen, I think it's a fantastic book. I'd encourage everybody to buy it. I love the way that you have said, pay whatever you think it's worth. That's also very exciting to me.
That's an exciting journey. And well, just wrap it up, and I hope we'll talk many times about it, and many aspects you said I thought that's not yet in the book. Maybe it's second, third one.
But it's where it took me because of what you said at the beginning about
Yeah.
the who.
Yeah, and I like that, because then I have been able to articulate why this is the first book in this new series.
Cool.
Don't know how many will follow. Yeah, and it's exciting. So I invite everyone to just get a copy. The link is below in the podcast, businessrevivalists.com/book. Um, invest in yourself. So it's up to you how much you want to pay for it. It's also launched through Amazon as an ebook, and very soon as a paperback. But there, I can't do that game with prices. So it's up to you what's most convenient. And also, if there is anything that resonated in this conversation, then I really invite you, literally, and forgive me for the choice of words, not to waste any time and connect, because resonance, that's a key. That is a trigger from the future. And don't ignore them. They can really easily be missed. And that's waste. So connect with Chris or with me. And Chris, thank you for taking the time to dig deep in it and reflect it back to me. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Arjan. And listen, I'm just what I've learned from you in the last 8 months has been priceless. So thank you.
You're welcome. That's actually mutual. So
Thank
take
you.
care. Bye bye.
Bye.